Ain't no half stepping with Marcus J live from the Den, Legacy Internet Radio. Thank y'all for staying with us as we progress throughout tonight's show. I mentioned on the other side that I had a clip that I wanted y'all to listen to before we got into our conversation about President Trump and you know the things that went on with the inauguration and all the other things this weekend. And so I'm going to start it off with this clip. It's about 7 minutes long or so, but you'll understand why I'm playing it with regards to how the children are affected by the president of the United States. Take a listen. We come back on the other side and talk to you about it.
1% of Americans in a CBS News poll out this week say that Mr. Trump will divide the country. Peter Van Zandt shows us how the harsh rhetoric of the campaign has caused anxiety and fear.
Just 25 miles from the nation's capital, a group of 10 and 11-year-olds have been thinking a lot about this day.
Tell me your feelings today. Donald Trump has been inaugurated as President of the United States.
I actually feel really scared, but I try not to think about it.
I think it's different now since Donald Trump's president. I think there has been an increase of racist people.
In the last year, I've heard people who said things that I won't say because I know I can't say them, and I know even if I could say them, I wouldn't.
Many adults would agree and argue that during the presidential campaign,
when Mexico sends its people, they're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists.
Donald Trump's blunt talk unleashed a crude side of our American identity that some thought was buried in our past.
We have to have a temporary ban on Muslims coming into this country. I'm sorry.
And all this tough talk has certainly been noticed by these fifth graders here at the Stedwick Elementary School in Montgomery County, Maryland. They represent the diversity that is the United States. Lynn's mother is from the African nation of Togo. Giovanni's parents are from Nicaragua and Peru.
Now that we have a new president, people are thinking wrong and doing stuff better.
Nora's parents came here from Indonesia.
When I heard Donald Trump first became elected, I felt a bit shook.
Perry's mom and dad are from Cameroon.
I'm scared someday he's gonna do what he said, and he's gonna take people away.
Even Brian is worried, and his parents are from Maryland.
The things he said about other people is not what a president should say.
I had overheard students talking about negative things that they had heard about Mexicans. And in my classroom, I actually had Mexican students.
Teacher Melinda Moye asked her students to write poems about what they'd heard people saying about them. Poems that were turned into this short video called The Lie.
The lie. Muslims are terrorists.
All black people are thieves. People from Mexico bring nothing good. Latinos can't speak English well.
All of the words in the film are their own. It's what they wanted to share and what they wanted others to know.
Give me a sense of when you watched The Lie for the first time.
I broke into tears, and I'd heard the entire poetry presentation how many times?
Peggy Pastor is the school principal. Her son Kevin, a professional filmmaker, produced the video.
You should know, not all Muslims are terrorists. When my dad pulls up the news and I just hear Muslims are terrorists, Muslims are bad, I just feel really heartbroken.
It makes me kind of angry, and I really just want to stand up for them. But it's really hard to, because I'm just a small person in a big world.
The sad truth is that Montgomery County has seen an epidemic of hate incidents in the past year.
We saw about a 32% increase from last year. And the increase occurred right after the election.
County Police Chief Tom Manger.
But for some folks, this notion of civility has just gone out the window. And these folks feel empowered now to say and do hateful things.
Days after the election, at the predominantly immigrant Episcopal Church of Our Savior in nearby Silver Spring, this graffiti appeared. Robert Harvey is the rector.
One little boy came up to me after this 10 o'clock service was over, and he looked right at that message that was written on the brick wall, Trump Nation, whites only. And he said, is this the way it's going to be now?
It is not an exaggeration to say that among the tens of millions of people who did not vote for Donald Trump, there is a sense of apprehension, even fear. One of those stories is here in McKinney, Texas. As she took the stage to give her valedictorian speech last June,
I'd like to offer you a different kind of speech.
19-year-old Larissa Martinez was on top of the world, headed to Yale University on a full scholarship. But she felt it important to let her classmates and eventually the country in on her biggest secret.
On July 11th, it will be exactly 6 years since I moved to McKinney from Mexico City, where I was born and raised. I am one of the 11 million undocumented immigrants living in the shadows of the United States.
Why did you decide to come out so publicly? And in that moment, what was the thinking?
Well, the way I saw it was that maybe it could change people's minds. I didn't want them to think that all we are rapists and criminals, because that's not true.
Her immigration status was not an issue for Yale, but it was for some people on Twitter.
Larissa Martinez is not brave or strong. She is a thief, and there is only one way to deal with thieves like her. And then they posted this picture. You have to go back.
Now, Larissa is worried because by coming out of the shadows, she has exposed her 11-year-old sister Andrea and their mother. In 2010, all three flew to Texas on tourist visas, fleeing their mom says an abusive husband. No wall would have stopped them. They simply stayed here illegally and since then have behaved pretty much like everyone else.
I pay my taxes and I do everything we have to do. We are not bad. We just want to have like a happy, safe life.
Larissa and her sister have applied for juvenile immigration visas, but the girls and their mother can be deported at any time.
I believe that everything we build day by day can be gone like this.
You're really worried.
Yes.
You don't know what the future holds.
No.
What kind of America do you hope to grow up in?
I want to be in America where things like hating people for their race won't exist, and everybody's able to get along with each other.
I just want it to be nice and quiet so everybody could have their own chance.
I want to become an American. That dream hasn't died yet.
Ain't no half stepping with Marcus J. Live from the Den, Legacy Internet Radio. A lot to respond to that. Diva. Looking at that video and looking at those children and listening to the things that they were saying about what their fears were. Sorry, Facebook Live, I'm getting you back together here in a minute. But listening to those children and those things that were important to them because of the conversations that they've heard the President of the United States having. I know you work with children, and you care about children, you love children. Was it hard for you to hear those children saying the things that they were saying? And it's probably a rhetorical question, but what's your thoughts? Tell me your thoughts on this.
Yeah, definitely. It breaks my heart. I was oblivious to those type of things, even though they were occurring behind the scenes, covertly. I was oblivious to racism and all of that as a child when I was 10, 11 years old. Like, it was just all about having fun, enjoying yourself, and your biggest stress was going to school every day and getting good grades. So I feel for these children. I really do. I feel for them having to fear living in this country. No matter what their race were, it was so many different races represented in that video, and all of them were afraid. And they shouldn't be at that age as children. They shouldn't have to be fearful that, they will be sent out of this country or hurt or anything like that. They should not have to deal with that.
No, Ash, when you hear children talking about how they feel the president of the United States should conduct himself or herself, depending on who, well, we'll say himself because we got to do it right now. How does that make you feel when we talk about children? How does it make you feel?
It bothers me. It bothers me pretty much. Unfortunately, as when I was a child, I did go to a St. Stephen's and St. Agnes in Northern Virginia. I went there for elementary school. It is a Tony school, very privileged, prestigious school. I was the only black child in much of my classes. St. Stephen's and St. Agnes is a school where all of the Republicans send their children. So in the 90s, it was very racist. And not only was I the only black child, not only was my family Democrat, we were also there on financial aid. So I experienced a lot. And if you Google St. Stephen's and St. Agnes, I want to give you kind of an understanding. Elementary school cost $32,000 a year. So of course we were there on financial aid. This is the school that is the alternative to Sewell Friends, which is a very democratic school, which is also the school that Sasha Malia went to. And from what I understand, one is still going there. And that was the Democrat side of things. So I wasn't, I didn't get into that school, but I got into the one I went. And I was made fun of. So I've experienced the fear that these children in the video have experienced. Mm-hmm. And I am sorry that so many years later, there's still children out there who are feeling fearful. But I came out stronger for it. And I do hope that these children come stronger for it. Fast forward, I was a teacher in high school. Those students come to me like, we don't know what's going to happen. And it's painful.
It's scary.
To watch. It's scary.
It's scary. We're getting a couple of hits. Our sister Laurel says she's seen the video, and she'd hate to be a kid growing up in today's climate. Solo said that he was a kid in the 70s dealing with racism. Hakeem has checked in. He's saying peace to the crew. 502, baby. What's happening? I think our brother K-Dub might be checking us out as well. So that's a shout out to our brother Dub. Peace to you, Hakeem. David, what you got?
I was just going to add that, these children were so insightful and intelligent at 10 years old. They know that Trump is the wrong choice. Why don't these adults that pride themselves on being so intelligent get it? Yeah. It just blows me away. How do you elect a man who comes out, he's not even hiding it. He comes out so strongly against people who are different from him.
It's crazy because I was having a conversation with one of our sisters in social media, and I won't mention who the person is because I didn't get permission to do that, and if I do, then I will. But we were talking about, we were having a very similar conversation to this, and we were talking about Donald Trump and the kinds of support that he had. And what I'm doing right now is I'm looking for the comments that I had actually written, because it would be much easier if I read my comment that I said at the time as opposed to trying to paraphrase it. But I may just have to do that because I actually can't find it. But basically what I said at the time is that there are two different kinds of Donald Trump voters. There's the outward racist, bigot, prejudiced person who may not think that they're racist and the bigot and prejudiced, but they are. Everybody around them knows. Mm-hmm. And if you question them on their bigotry, they actually get offended, because they're that guy that has black friends, mm-hmm. And they feel empowered by being able to use the N-word around their friends. But it just feels a little bit different coming from you because we know how you do. Mm-hmm. There's that Donald Trump supporter.
Right.
That person's probably Southern white. That person probably lives rural or lives, I don't want to say poor, but, middle class to lower class. And for some reason, I still haven't figured out why those people vote Republican, but that's another conversation for another day. But then there's the other Donald Trump voter who is a reasonable person, who has been known to vote Democrat and Republican, who, quite frankly, does not like Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and the Democrats of today, who was just seeking some sort of change. They got past a lot of the negative stuff that Donald Trump was doing and saying. They didn't like it any more than we did, but it was a necessary thing to deal with because they felt like there would be change. And those people are legitimate. Those people are legitimate, and they deserve our respect.
But they voted against their own interests in many ways.
They may have voted against their own interests, but at the same time, we have the right to vote the way we feel we need to vote. And it's our opinion that they voted against their interests. They may disagree. Ain't no hashtag on Marcus J. Live from the Den Legacy Internet Radio. We got a call on the live line. Caller, what's your name? What you want to get in on?
Hey, Marcus. This is Lily. How y'all doing tonight?
What's going on, sis? How you doing?
I'm trying to be okay. I'm not gonna say too much because we're gonna definitely discuss the establishment tomorrow night. But I have to expand upon what you were just stating about the individuals who support Donald Trump. And I think the reality that we all have to accept is that the people were fed up. People that supported Donald Trump were Democrats, Republicans, moderate, liberal, conservative, however you want to phrase it, who were, number one, fed up with having an African-American man in office for 8 years, fed up with the government, period, fed up with what they could see as wrong, with no facts, with no real evidence that anything was actually wrong, without understanding that the Affordable Care Act and Obamacare is the same thing. And those are the individuals who have this hate in their heart, not just for black people or not just for ethnic individuals, but for the establishment. And until we can truly define the establishment, I don't think people are going to really understand the real truth behind how Donald Trump is in office. Granted, I agree that it's sad that our babies understand that he's not the best fit, which is that term that's used, when you want to hire certain people, but you can't do it simply because it's not going to fit your establishment. But he's not what you call the best fit. However, hatred, a platform built on hatred, won over all of the weak-minded people who believed everything that he said. And until we can truly get to the root of what the establishment is, we're going to continue to have candidates such as him, and now it's going to get even worse.
I agree with I agree. I totally
the
agree.
Bushes and the Clintons, those legacies have died out.
But there's
and
something
we have to put our hands on people and start developing them.
There's something to be said for the Bushes and the Clintons. Neither of them are rocking with Donald Trump.
Oh, neither. Correct.
Right.
Correct.
But I actually kind of agree with the caller. If we're going to be very honest, Trump ran an identical campaign to what Obama did 8 years ago and then again 4 years ago. So I do believe that the people who voted for Trump were just tired of the old establishment. Clinton, Hillary used the same political rhetoric that worked since George Washington was in office, but it don't work no more. And the people are tired of that. And when you have a lot of weak-minded individuals, such as she said, who just want change, and they are tired of the establishment and what they feel are backroom political deals, it's just not going to work. Unfortunately, a lot of people just did not like Hillary, so a lot of people just didn't turn out to vote against hatred, but those who were just so vehemently against the establishment did vote, and they aligned themselves with the hatred. And the one reason why I feel that they did that is because in all of the hatred that Trump was promoting, if you were white, you felt like you would be excused or spared from what he was saying, what he was bringing down. So he could talk about, the black people, and he can talk about the Muslims and the Latinos, but he didn't talk about me, so I'll be spared. And I don't know if that is exactly racism. And that's where my internal conflict is, because I don't know if I can say, that is racism so much as maybe it's nostalgia, maybe it's just aligning yourself with the whiter devil. I don't know what to call it. I know that there is some racism in that. Huh?
It's a false sense of pride.
It
is. Like the individuals who tell you that your dress looks nice when it really looks like a $2 piece of mess, simply because they don't have the integrity to say, girl, you look bad today. And see, what happened was all of these people could hide behind social media, such as our President Trump, and use that as a platform to generate and affirm himself. But he's a really weak, insecure man. And anybody who truly understands that the office of the President of the United States of America should be held to a higher standard, at this point in time, he should be held to the same standard as a peasant back in the day, simply because that's how he's carrying himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but we have to hold him accountable.
I got you.
And we are, and you know what? And in this process, I really do think that the press is holding him accountable, and that is why the Trump administration is so vehemently opposing the press. And and I don't know if you saw the new the way that they even conduct the press rooms. The secretary
he changed it all up. And
that's right.
And it's crazy. Lily,
well, I'm gonna hang up so y'all can have another caller, but I just wanted to put that in the atmosphere. And y'all have a great evening.
Thank you, sis. We appreciate you. Have Stephen Marks. I'm glad that came up, because I do want to talk about the inauguration. And here's where I want to go. Here's my question, actually. Actually, before I do that, let me get some comments in, because I want to make sure that the Facebook Live folks feel like they're part of it. A lot of comments are here. I'm not going to be able to get them all in, but I'm going to get most of them in. Our sister Vicky J, who is the lead of the Woke Squad, dope podcast that we have here on Legacy Internet Radio on Friday nights. They're based out of Boston. Check them out right here on Legacy Internet Radio. She says it's a shame that the world continues to repeat history. Every generation has to deal with this. Let's see. Mike has jumped back in. His kids splitting off into liberals and conservatives in middle school. They are clicking out based on political beliefs and the way they feel about the world, basic human decency and specific behavior that they can tolerate. And it's sad to him. He grew up with some families that just took him in like they were their own. But now we struggle with Trump. As a devout Christians, voting for Trump, Lord have mercy. I agree with that. Solo wants to know if he can run for president with bad credit. He's preparing it, Solo for president. Here's the deal. I had a conversation. I'm going to come back to that point that I was getting ready to make in a minute. We'll talk about the inauguration, all of that kind of stuff. But I want to address something that we had said a little while ago when we're talking about white folk. Elephant in the room again. This is the place that we don't run from conversations. And I was talking to one of my white brothers that I grew up with in high school, and he grew up just like I did. You know what I mean? He grew up in the hood like I did. He was the product of a single parent family, which I was not. He listened to hip hop like we did. I mean, we didn't pay attention that he was. I mean, we knew he was white. I don't want to overstate that, but we didn't really care. It was just our homie. He was cool. As we've gotten older, ideologically, we've changed, and we still boys, but we're very, very different now in how we view the world. Mm-hmm. And we were having a conversation like we always do on social media, and I love he's very candid and very fair with regards to his opinions. I don't always agree with them, but we were talking about this, and he talked about how, as a white man, he doesn't get to have an opinion when there's a conversation of race, because he's always going to be wrong and seem like he's a racist. And I had to kind of go in on him a little bit and just kind of let him in on a little secret. And I told him, I said, that goes both ways. And if I got to suck some stuff up, you got to suck it up. Like I always supported President Barack Obama. I ain't like everything he did, but black folks and white folks assumed that I liked and supported him mostly because he was black. And about that part about him being black, nobody cared that his mama was white. Why? Because when you look at him, you see a black dude. And with that comes all the good and the pride and the N-word and the hang him stuff and all of that stuff. Why? Because he's black. And I said to him, the same goes for you as a white man. Those of us who know him, we know his story. I kind of gave you a little bit about that. Folks who don't, they just see a white dude. Is it fair? Ask President Obama if it was fair how he was treated. And President Trump has said some of the most vile things a person can say. He gets away with it because he's a rich white dude. And we all know that that's just real talk. President Obama would have never been elected if he had 3 wives spread out with 5 kids among them. And it's America. The landscape is changing, and some white folks is getting a taste of what many of us black folk have always dealt with. Of course, it ain't fair. It ain't fair for us. It ain't fair for them, but it's our shared America. And if our current president, who now has to lead us through all of this, is going to continue acting the way he's acting, I'm going to be extremely concerned because his past is not such that leads me to think that he cares about a middle-class white man any more than he cares about me as a black man. And that's essentially the gist of the conversation that he and I was having, and I just had to keep it 100 with him. You know, and the conversation kind of ended there. I don't know that, I want to toot my own horn and say it was a drop the mic moment, but I think it was kind of a drop the mic moment. Like, how do you respond to that? Mm-hmm. So the next piece that I want to get into, Diva, is the inauguration and the protests and the marches in Ashley. Why is it important for the press secretary to go on the news and dispute the media reports of how many people showed up? That blew my mind. Now, in 2009, I was there. Me and K-Dub and others were there. We were there together.
I was too.
And it was one of the physically most miserable days of my life. I mean, it was a miserable.
Freezing cold.
It was freezing cold. It was just a miserable day, but I wouldn't trade it because of their history. And I was there. I know there was over 1.5 million people there. I was also at the Million Man March. I know what 1 million people looks like.
Right.
There's 1 million people out there. It wasn't 1 million people on Saturday.
It was empty.
It was
like
more.
my
It was
grandma's cookout.
It was
something.
more women marching on Saturday. Actually, Friday. It was more women marching on Saturday than people showing up to the inauguration on Friday.
Right.
Now, a normal person with thick skin wouldn't care about that, but a person who's very thin-skinned has to have a question about that. So the press secretary goes on. He says it's the most highest rated, and more people came than ever before, and all that. Everybody knew he was lying. I don't know why President Trump sent him out there to lie. But then yesterday, Kellyanne Conway, who is Donald Trump's advisor, and she led his campaign, of course, after Ted Cruz left, because people forget she was running his campaign. She said that the dude Spicer was just giving, what did she call it?
Her exact word was, well, that's just an alternative fact. But let's focus on
alternative facts.
And it's been trending ever since.
Alternative facts. What the hell is that?
A lie.
A lie. Mm-hmm.
Alternative facts. So let's talk about it. I mean, it's on the floor, wherever y'all want to go.
I mean, first of all, I want to say to the gentleman who was interviewing her, I've watched this video at least 4 times, and I'm just not forgot the name of the guy who was
Todd.
Chuck Todd. Okay,
Chuck Todd.
I actually didn't like how he kept using the term falsehood, and I said, okay, so falsehood is the political term, I guess, of saying a lie, and I didn't like that because it's a lie. Call it what it is. But then when she said alternative fact, that was just so far to the right. It was just like the alt-right, which is alternative right, which is the term for KKK, Nazi. And then we have alternative facts, which is a new term for lie. It just seems that this entire regime that Trump is establishing is completely alternative, and they are having what is also termed alternative truths because they're living in an alternate reality, and that's what they're building. And they are shutting down the press, who is now holding them accountable for what they're doing. But how can you hold somebody accountable if you're not in the room to count? So they're pushing them out, and I mean, I'm slowly seeing this. And my question, the thing that runs through my mind is Nazi Germany. And I'm mentioning that because the Republicans mentioned Nazi Germany. At what point did the Jews know that they were in trouble? Was it when the Nazis bum rushed their door and grabbed them and said, let's go to the ghettos? Because they went to the ghettos before they went to the concentration camps. Was it then? Or was it when they started to see the propaganda on the news? Or was it when, they weren't allowed to walk in the street? I mean, some people don't know this. When a Jew was walking on the street, if a German was stepped on that same curb, the Jew had to walk in the gutter. They weren't even allowed on the street or on the same sidewalk. So at what point did they say, okay, now we got to go? And I don't know when that was, but every day I look for that point here. And I'm just praying that the U.S. democracy doesn't get to a point where I've missed the opportunity to escape, or where this regime isn't shut down, but so that I don't have to escape, because we don't even get to that point. But this is always running in my mind. And one thing I do know is that the Nazi regime controlled the press.
Yeah, the media.
They didn't allow
propaganda.
Actual press. Yes, and I feel like that's where it started.
Yeah.
And so when you're using these terms like alternate truths, alternate facts, alt-right, and you're saying, because alternative in itself is not a bad word. We've been calling homosexuals an alternative lifestyle for the longest time, and we've been promoting that this is an alternative lifestyle. It's not bad. So, or this is an alternate way of fixing your car, or doing whatever. So when you're saying alternative, you're thinking, well, it's not really bad.
Right, it's just another form.
But we're seeing what's happening, and I'm a little nervous about that.
Yeah, no, I got you.
Me too.
When I think about what you just said, I mean, it's I can't even really add anything to it. I mean, you just you laid it out there pretty plain. I do want to ask both of you ladies, Diva. I want to ask you first about Saturday. You had this women's march, and we're gonna come back to the protest in a minute.
Okay.
Because I specifically want to talk about that, but this women's march that we had across the country and the world on Saturday to protest against Donald Trump's election as president of the United States. What's your thoughts about those? I
thought it was really inspiring. I did not know it was going to become that big. I thought it was just a D.C. thing, and I had planned to go but decided against it. I just didn't feel like traveling alone up there and all that crowd. But I was at home rooting for, all of them, and it was peaceful as far as I know. There were no riots or anything that I know of. From the women's marches, so I thought it was a positive thing.
I thought was funny, Diva? I thought that it was 500,000 women out there, women and men, because there's a lot of dudes out there too. 500,000 people showed up for the women's march on Saturday, estimates say, and a little over 200,000 the day before for the inauguration. I actually,
that's crazy.
And President Trump did say, well, did all those people vote? I actually think that's a fair question when he asked that question.
Yeah.
I do think that's a fair question.
Well, people are posting that too, like on Facebook, like little jokes and memes and stuff about, where were all those supporters.
I mean, it's a fair question. It's a fair question.
I'll tell you where they were. I'll tell you where they were. They were not voting for Hillary. A lot of those supporters actually voted for Trump. And I saw that sign of that person said, remember, the white woman voted for Trump. And he did get a large segment of the white female voters. And feminism, I, as a black woman, do not align with the white feminist movement. I don't. I really don't. I am so thankful that there were women worldwide who aligned themselves with the American feminist movement. I mean, this was a march that reached all 7 continents. even Antarctica. They had about 20 people in Antarctica who stood together with their signs and protested. It touched India, it touched everywhere, and I'm so happy for that. But in the States, white women do not necessarily know my struggle. Now, there are certain struggles that are women across the board. Right. What I do with my body has nothing to do with what that man thinks I should do with my body. I don't care what race you are. As women, we do, if we have a vagina, we are united in that front. But I can look around left and right and see that a lot of them do have an advantage that I don't have socially. And so I live in D.C. I was in D.C. this weekend. I was very happy that we all got together, but I really don't think marches do anything. But what bothered me more is the fake rioters that came down on Inauguration Day. My brother and my father were at the inauguration of Donald Trump, okay? And that's a whole nother story, but they were there. And they said, there isn't any rioting, people aren't doing anything, but the people who were being aggressive were white people. And they cover their faces and they cover their mouths so that they can appear to be racially ambiguous, so that people can assume that they are black, but you could still see their hands, you could see their hair, and they were white. And they went into the downtown DC and started terrorizing areas that otherwise would be extremely quiet.
Breaking windows.
And I couldn't believe. And then when the news reporter asked one of them, "Where are you from?" he said, "I flew in from Chicago." So you come in from these other cities and you go from city to city trying to incite violence and an all-out riot when there isn't one necessary.
Not only is not one necessary, but I think when we hear the word rioter, unfortunately, we assume that it's black folk, and that's exactly. I'm glad you went there, and I'm glad you brought it up, because that's exactly what I wanted to talk about. Because you had folks that were sharing pictures and memes in social media, attributing it to the inauguration on Saturday, but it was actually not. It was actually other situations in other cities at other times, and every single person that I saw in the videos that I saw, I ain't see no black people out there.
They weren't there.
Like with black people, with respect to your brother and your father. But real talk, what black folk for real is going to Donald Trump's inauguration.
Right. And I'm going to tell you, I will explain why my brother and my father were there, because both of them were with me down there in 2009 when Obama was in office. And then before the inauguration, on the day that I'm about to get emotional, I'm sorry, but on the day that he was elected, that was the happiest day of my life, because a black man was president. But what was more happy than that was how everybody in D.C., I don't care what race you were, I don't care what religion you were, but everybody in Washington, D.C. went down in front of the White House, and we danced in front of that White House. And my mom was dancing with me. There was no music. I have never been in a situation where there was that much happiness and that much hope and that much excitement. And I'm sorry for crying, but it was just so amazing that I can imagine it's just like a wedding, a wedding, thousands of weddings at a time. It was just the most beautiful thing I ever experienced. And then we do it again on the day that he was actually inaugurated. You have all these people in the freezing cold. I mean, it felt like it was negative 300 degrees out there.
I was there. It was not
but we were all there. Washington, D.C., my hometown, we know how to protest. People protest every day for everything. So when random people come down and try to destroy the city, that hurt me a little bit personally, because we don't need you to do that. We always protest. We know how to be out there with the drums and the signs and yelling and chanting, and then we also know how to celebrate together. My brother and my father went down there because my brother lived in Africa for 2.5, almost 3 years, and he says to me, "Ashley, I'm going just to make sure that this is really and truly a peaceful transition of power, because I know what it's like to be in a country, Sudan, when your democracy is stolen, and when the nation turns against itself. And he said Trump got in, and we need to make sure that this is a peaceful transition, because if it doesn't go over peacefully, the country could fall apart, and he didn't want that. And so he wanted to experience that. And somehow my father is a pretty good guy, so he was able to get tickets to go for my brother's sake. And they went, and they saw. But when you lived in a country where democracy fell on its head, Sudan split in half.
And we also know, being from D.C., I can imagine and I can appreciate the feeling and the emotion, because that's your town. That's your, not only is it your president, Barack Hussein Obama, but Donald John Trump as well. And so I can appreciate your brother wanting to make sure that it goes down right, but I can appreciate the emotion coming from you, having been there, because I was also there, not from the day he was elected, but certainly on Inauguration Day. And while I was very clear about it being the most physically miserable day of my life, there were certain parts of the day where my body didn't matter. I didn't care how I felt, because inside was so joyous. Now, there are certain things about his presidency that made me very unhappy, but that's just the way it goes. But you got all of these, well, he didn't do nothing for black people. Hey, look, man, that's how you feel, then cool. Ain't nobody in a coon because they disagree with you. There's a such thing of being too woke. They call it insomnia, and that's a miserable feeling as well. You know what I mean? So y'all woke folk, you cut the bullshit. Y'all ain't got it figured out no more than nobody else does. Right. And that's essentially what makes this country so-called great. But when it ain't so great is you making other folks feel like they wrong for feeling how they feel. Like them Trump folks got the right to be how they be. Now, the bigoted racist ones, that's different. But the ones who legitimately voted for him because they don't like the Democrats, I got no problem with them. I really don't. I got no problem with them. Having said all of that, back to the protests and stuff, I ain't hear the word thug thrown around. I heard rioter, but it wasn't like how you hear them talking about Ferguson and Baltimore and some of the other towns where they pretty much did act a damn fool. But it was white folks doing this. Yeah. I mean, we saw the video, and I don't know that on a grand scale matters with regards to the visual, but subliminally, we have gotten used to seeing black people taking trash cans and throwing them into windows.
Right. So you just assume they have to be black.
Right. And it blew some folks' mind to see them white folks out there doing that. There's some folks that was legitimately like, damn, white folks do this? Yes, white folks too. White folks got so pissed off, they actually threw tea in the harbor, and that's how they started America, okay? Right. These people got protests down pat. They know how to do this. They invented it. What the hell pouring tea in the harbor? If that ain't a riot, I don't know what it is. Like, for real. Go back and do your history if you think I'm tripping. Ain't no half stepping with Marcus J. live from the den. Legacy Internet Radio. We're going to take another break. And when we come back, I am going to re-air the interview that we did last week with the number one true fighter, Warren Ballentine. We had a very great conversation. We talked about the Obama administration and, the Obama legacy and the Trump administration. We had all kinds of technical difficulties last week. It's the reason why I'm going to re-air this so that you can hear it. And we're going to get through that. And then after that, we'll close it out with our rants and our closings. We got the Dating Pool Diva, author Charisma, our Legacy Internet Radio sponsor. And we also have our sister Ashley Joy, the host of Joy and Body Radio, heard every single Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, right here on Legacy Internet Radio. Listening to the flagship show, Marcus J. and the crew and you. Be back in a few.
Holistic care for the mind, body, and spirit. Free Spirit Enterprises, LLC, is a parent company for Organic Creations, Jewelry by Design, Miller Publishing, and Consultation Services. Organic Creations offers you the best in natural, homemade skin and hair care products. Jewelry by Design allows you, the customer, to design your own jewelry, as it is custom made just for you. Thinking of self-publishing a book or novel? Check out Miller Publishing and Consultation Services. Free Spirit Enterprises is where holistic care meets mind, body, and spirit. Visit us at freespiritenterprisesco.biz. That's FRESPIRIenterprisesco.biz. Or you can call 804-252-6562. Like us on Facebook under Free Spirit Enterprises, LLC.